important, and therefore the importance of peace is encouraged. But now let's go straight to our conversation when we talk about the climate change and how that is affecting birds and their migration. Now, climate change continues to create havoc across the world, not only for humans living in it, not only for our habitats and places that we call home, but even birds that we say live on the skies also come down to refuel. They call them refreshing centers, which are actually destroyed due to climate change. And today in studio to have this conversation with me is Alex Ngari, on my immediate left, Migratory Birds and Flyways Program Manager for Africa BirdLife International, and Paul Gasheru, Species and Sites Manager, Nature Kenya, and a partner for BirdLife in Kenya. Now, let me just come to you straight, Alex. Now, when we talk about migration of birds, how important is it for birds to move from one point to the other, and how does that benefit us as human beings?
Thank you very much, Dennis, first of all, for having me here. And straight to your point, birds are very important. They are important components of our ecosystems. And you can imagine living in a world which does not have birds. So in terms of migratory birds, what birds have done is that they have evolved so that they are able to thrive well on this world. And how does that happen? They have adopted a way of moving from one place to another. One, to seek for suitable shelter. Number two, to breed. Number three, to eat, to forage. So along the African Eurasian Flyway region, we have about 2 billion birds coming to Africa every 2 times every year. So birds move to the northern hemisphere during summer, to meet in summer, and during summer in northern hemisphere, the summer is very rich in terms of food. Mm-hmm. So birds go there to take advantage of this a good atmosphere to breed, and because there is a lot of food, the young ones also take advantage of this. And in northern hemisphere, because the biodiversity riches are not as much as in Africa, so you find that in northern hemisphere there is even there are not many predators that will feed on the chicks for the birds. So the northern hemisphere becomes a good area for the birds to exploit. So what happens is that when the summer ends, the chicks are grown, they come back to Africa, where they spend like in the entire life cycle, they spend like 3/4 of their lives in Africa. Mm-hmm. So we can comfortably say the migratory birds belong to Africa. Mm-hmm. They only go to the northern hemisphere to feed and have babies and then come back.
Now, let me come to you, Paul. Now, I remember growing up, I could see a lot of birds, especially during, I think, September, October, when we have a lot of birds moving, and also I think around May. And we used to look at that as a phenomenon. We used to enjoy seeing that, and that is not the case today.
Yes.
Why is that the case?
So, so as Alex has started to allude to, birds move for certain reasons, and within our context, given that where Kenya is positioned, it falls within 2 major routes that birds fly from the northern hemisphere as they move southwards. Now it's becoming more, it's autumn, mm-hmm. Winter will be coming soon in the north, so birds are moving southwards to the extent of even South Africa. So during that period, Kenya has 2 major routes, which one falls within the Rift Valley area, which comes from Lake Turkana, with the southern extent being Lake Magadi. Then we also have the coastal region, where which now serves also birds moving along the coastal strip of the continent. So during the year, we have 2 major migratory seasons. One which you call the winter migratory season, and the summer migratory season, if you think of it in those two contexts. So the winter migratory season is now, which starts from around October through to February next year, and then the summer starts from around April, May, as the birds move northwards. The south one is a bit more prominent because then there is more birds and you're able to see them much more visibly than when they are moving back north, because as they move back north, they are more or less, some will be left behind, some will be some will use other routes, but the southern movement is quite defined. So in Kenya you find like the Rift Valley lakes like Boringo, Bogoria, Elementaita, Naivasha are major stopovers for these birds. And on the coastal region, the coastal forests and the wetlands like Tana River Delta and others, or the estuary like Sabaki River. So that defines, especially during those two major seasons, which starts from October through to February, and May to around June, are the two major migratory seasons that we see birds utilizing.
Now, Alex, let's now talk about the importance of birds in the ecosystem as you speak, because someone would I mean, if a lot of our fellow peers out there, someone would not understand the importance of birds out there. I mean, birds are supposed to be on the sky. What are they doing on land? But how important are birds for us on our day-to-day lives? And for example, just let's talk about the importance of having a bird like vultures.
Okay. It's a very good question, Dennis. First of all, before you wake up, it is the bird that wake you up.
They sing in the morning.
They sing in the morning. And you can imagine you waking up and there is no sound of a bird. That's a bit depressing. So going to your example, which is more direct, vultures, for which some are actually migratory, they are very important to human beings. Can you imagine dead bodies of animals in our parks lying there for weeks and there's no one to clear them? So what the vultures do, they go into the parks, into the wildlife areas, and they clear the carcasses for us. If the vultures were not doing it, we would be doing it ourselves. We would be spending millions of shillings to clear our parks so that our parks can be clean. So there are two things that happen when the vultures clears the parks. So a lot of times we do not know what kills the wildlife. It could be diseases. So once the vultures clear the dead bodies, we are safe. The diseases never spread, and interestingly enough, the vultures do not fall sick. So these are our cleanup crew, and they do it for free. So are we able to pay them? No. The thank you that we are able to do them is to embrace them and love them and do what it takes for them to thrive even today and tomorrow. So that is one, a diseases clearance, and also the aesthetic value of our parks. You don't want to go to Nairobi National Park or Masai Mara and the whole area is thinking of dead bodies. So that way it's very important. Of course, there is a whole issue of the food chain, and how the ecosystem benefits from when one bird feeds on the scavengers, and the benefits are transferred to the next chain. The other thing is that if the carcasses were left in the field, you'd have a lot of what we call feral dogs, for example. And the feral dogs are the kind of dogs that will carry diseases like scabies, rabies, correct? So they help in terms of reducing the amount of food that would be available for animals that are not very friendly to human beings, I would say.
When you talk about very important aspects, this is a resource that we don't pay for. All we need to do is to love them. But even as we talk about that now, we say as humans we have to live, we have to develop. And every day we must have power. We have power grids going everywhere across the world, you know.
Yes.
We have planes that are flying across the world right now. And this is because it is what comes with being human. But as development grows, we see that the ecosystems where birds live, the homes where birds stay, that is their sky, have been inhabited by now planes. Bird strikes are a common knowledge to any pilot you talk to today. We have accidents, I'd call them accidents, birds with power lines. As we have these development, just how has these how have these development affected bird population across the world?
So changes are inevitable, you know, as in humans are geared towards manipulating our environment significantly. So, and that comes, I think, it's human nature, if I say that, it's human nature to manipulate your environment and to make it habitable for ourselves. So, you see, development comes with issues of land use changes. If you are here, Nairobi, when you look at those very old images of before Nairobi was developed, it was a savanna ecosystem. Nairobi itself has a name in Maasai saying it's a places which had cool waters.
Cool water,
you know. So this is where the Maasais would come in their 1800s to water their cows. But changes have happened, and now you see how Nairobi is at the moment. So land use change is one of the largest factor that is affecting. Land use change is one of the largest factors that's affecting birds because it's converting the habitats to other uses that are not palatable to them. For example, like in the US, just a month ago, there are 300 individual birds were killed by hitting one building, which was published in the Guardian newspaper. So a flock of birds hitting one building, 300 individuals, and just dying. You can imagine now all these skyscrapers that we have within Nairobi, hitting birds coming and hitting and colliding with them. So it means there's a huge component of land use change that is affecting our birds and our environment. And as a result of the land use change, now it's coming with issues of reducing suitable habitat, places where they can get food, because then they're being forced to move to the different to other areas that are not necessarily suitable for them. And then you see, like now with the land use changes, there is issues of now the supporting infrastructure. So that is airports, for example, power lines, which comes with it, the production of power from geothermal to hydro to wind, and all those things that which share space with birds provide some significant impact on them. So overall, because of development, we are seeing the landscape is getting fragmented. So you find when birds are migrating southwards, you find the cities are coming up, and we are told birds use the magnetism and stars to move around the night skies. They're not able to see the night skies, so they are seeing lights that causes a bit of disillusionment for birds. So all these things have a big effect on birds because they're displacing them. There's an effect of behavior change and potentially issues to do with their survival, which then, because they provide obstacles and barriers and provide potential areas for them to starve, because then the habitat has been converted.
Now, every year we have the World Migratory Bird Day.
Correct.
Now, this year's theme is water sustaining bird life.
Yes.
Now, here's a question where even on a normal day-to-day life, as humans, as Kenyans, as people living on Earth, our sources of water are becoming less and less by the day.
Yes.
Just how crazy is it for the birds?
Yeah.
And in the event that they are traveling and there is no waterway, where do they go?
Yeah, it's very interesting, at the same time very confusing, Dennis, because water is life. And the same way you feel thirsty is the same way the birds will feel thirsty. So can you imagine traveling for thousands of kilometers and finding no water to drink or no place to feed? Because a lot of wetlands in Africa and elsewhere are important sites for birds to feed on, birds to rest. So with wetlands going down, it means then that the world is becoming poorer and poorer for birds and also the migratory species. Places like Lake Natron, they are important sites for breeding of flamingos. We all cherish flamingos. But can you imagine a Lake Natron without water? What will happen? So climate change is a big culprit because, for example, if you look at Lake Chad, Lake Chad is a desert lake, a desert lake in Sahara Desert, and the lake has been going down. It has been constricting, which means then that the value for birds in terms of the the value for that wetland site in terms of bird is getting poorer. The birds are not able to thrive as they used to be. And that is just an example in the north. The same case applies to places in East Africa, where, for example, the farmers, ourselves as we grow crops, we are impacting on wetlands. How many places have you seen farmers really struggling to drain some wetlands so that they can grow arrowroots? They are quite a number. The other thing is that the muddy flats, it talked about the coastal areas being very important for migratory species. So what is happening with the climate change is that the sea level is rising. And what happens with sea level rise is that the water is covering or inundating areas that are supposed to be foraging fields for the birds. So in 50 years to come, and the changes happen gradually, we'll be having a lot of problems. There will be no, for example, very few areas left for the birds to thrive. So the other thing is that the climate change is putting pressure on birds that are already facing the pressure. For example, if you look at the issue of hunting of birds, is a very serious issue, especially here in Africa, and where BirdLife International has been able to collect data, a lot of surprising revelations have been made. I'll give an example of Egypt, which sits in a very strategic place in terms of birds moving out and inside Africa. So we could easily call Egypt as a bottleneck country because birds congregate in Egypt before they exit or as they come to Africa. And what happens in Egypt with the research that BirdLife International did, we found out that about 5 million birds are killed every year by hunters. So this is Egypt alone. There is Morocco, there is Libya, there is Algeria, and of course we've heard since we were young people killing birds in sub-Saharan Africa. People literally go to the field and kill birds. So apart from the pressure that we are having on through climate change, more pressure is being experienced when there is a IKB, we call it IKB, illegal killing of birds, and the bird structure that you are talking about, the buildings, the infrastructure, coming in to take some more numbers of birds away from the natural systems.
Ecosystems.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we're having a conversation on issues to do with climate change and birds. In studio with me